Okay, this tutorial is going to help you answer a question that asks you to explain the effects of climate relief and drainage on the formation of, in this case, we're going to look at brown forest soils, also known as brown earths. Okay, and in this particular question, you are going to be looking to answer a question that looks a little bit like this one here. Explain how factors such as natural vegetation, soil organisms, climate relief, and drainage have contributed to the formation and characteristics of a brown soil. Now, this question is worth 8 marks. It could be worth up to 10 marks. There is marks awarded for descriptive points. Normally you get 1 mark for every 2 descriptive points you make, and a full mark for every explanation of descriptive points. Okay, the best way to approach answering this is to first of all look at the tutorial where I've taught you how to draw a diagram and annotate it with descriptions of the characteristics of the soil. And doing this, just like in all 3 soils, doesn't require any explanation. It purely just requires you to point out that it's got dark brown, that it's a deep soil, that it's got lots of biota, that there's an iron pan. You don't need to tell me any of these factors. You just have to say that these are what's happening. This exam question now requires you to explain all of that. And that's obviously a little bit harder, and it's well worth revising. As I go through each of these points, I'll describe the point, and then I will offer the explanation. And I suggest you then pause it, note it down, and have a look at the whole answer at the end when you've formed it together. And remember, you're going to be looking for somewhere between 6 to 8 explanations to be really confident you can cover a question if it's worth a lot of marks. Okay, so here's the first part of this question. First thing you're going to want to say is that the soil is going to be very rich in nutrients. And you're going to want to then explain that that's because it comes from deciduous forests that are found on the surface, which give off leaf litter that then falls to the ground and decays to feed the soil. And because these forests are dropping their leaves every autumn, there's continual replenishment of organic matter on the forest floor to feed the soil. Second thing you want to say is that the soil tends to be very deep, can be up to 1 meter in depth. That's due to the large amount of leaf vegetation on the surface, which is decomposing very rapidly, and that's because of the warm climate. Okay, you now want to tell me that the soil is very well mixed, and you're going to then tell me it's mixed because it's rich in soil biota like worms. A further mark can be got from telling me why it's rich in soil biota. Why are there lots of worms? You're going to say there's lots of worms because they thrive due to the mild winters and the warm climates that these soils tend to be found in. If we go to the top of the soil and look at the O horizon, we want to say that it tends to be very dark in colour. It's a mull humus, that's M-U-L-L. You can even tell me that it has a pH of 5.8. That's its actual acidic level. That's over here. And you'll want to tell me that that is because of the leaves that are broken down by microorganisms in the soil. The A horizon tends to be dark brown in colour, and that's due to the rich humus content that is being leached downwards out of the O horizon. You want to tell me that leaching does occur, but it's not significant because it's actually in balance with the upward movement of water and minerals created by evaporation. This process moving through evaporation is what we call capillary action, and therefore any nutrients that are washed down are then drawn back up by roots and by evaporation, which means that all of the layers are very rich in nutrients, and actually a lot of the minerals that are released by the rocks down here are drawn towards the surface, and therefore there's a lot of mineral content in the higher regions of the soil. Okay. The gradual leaching of material downwards, however, does often result in an iron pan forming. That's what we can see here. And that's because of iron and aluminium oxides building up, which then begin to oxidize and give that reddish color. And they build up over time to actually create kind of a little thin grayish layer known as the iron pan. The soil itself forms on a limestone or a schist. That's spelt there. And there's 2 things that you can say about it. There's 2 explanations. That because these rocks allow water to percolate through them, this soil is not waterlogged, it's very well drained. And second thing, you can also say it's also, these rocks are very rich in minerals, and therefore the soil is going to be very rich in minerals. Further point you can make, finally, is that because the soil has lots of soil biota in it, like little worms that dig their tunnels all the way up and down through the soil over time, that the soil becomes very well drained. That water that rains on the surface will very quickly drain through all of those tiny tunnels created by worms down to the parent material, which it will then percolate through. So it's a very well drained soil and you don't get much waterlogging. Okay, now, as I've gone through this video, at each point you want to pause it, think about what was the descriptive statement from the diagram, and then what was the explanation for that particular point. And make sure that you can write down at least 8 explanations for descriptive points, and you will be more than covering a 10-mark question should you be asked to do that. Because remember, you are getting marks also for making descriptive statements.